Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to create a course menu that will branch to different parts of your course inside of Articulate Storyline. Now, I have seen a lot of new students try to do this where they branch or they want to branch to a different section and come back to this main menu and have it mark off as complete. Now, I've seen a lot of different approaches, some good, some bad, on how to do this. Even how to create the different menu items where you're trying to set up, okay, this is how the menu will look before it goes, this is how it look when it comes back. Those are the kinds of things that you can do. Now, you could approach this a couple different ways. You could use visited states. If you do use visited states, you have to make sure that your settings are correct when you come back to it. Even if you use visited states, there may be some reasons when you come back to that page where the settings of that page gets reset. So that's where I like to actually use variables instead of visited states when I come back to that. So we'll walk through all of that, and I'm going to talk about how to kind of set it up as well. So let's dive right into Storyline. And this is my main menu that I have right now. I have Module 1, Module 2, Module 3. Now, the different approaches that I've seen is people will take the image, they'll take the shapes in the background, they'll take the text as well, and then they will group it all together. That's fine, but then you have to add the trigger to the group in order to branch to the different pages or the different sections inside of Storyline. And to me, you're then having, if you're changing states of like a visited state, you may have to change it on several different items. On the image, on the check mark or the little arrow down, you may need to change that all to visited states. So it could get pretty complex. And so if there is an easier way to do it, I will take it. And that's where I actually like to use states and take, instead of grouping everything, putting everything inside of states. So you can see right here, it also simplifies our main timeline. So we just have Module 1, Module 2, and Module 3. But if I go into that state, I'll show you how I built that. So in the normal state, I have an image, and I just brought that image into this shape state. And the reason why I brought it into the shape state is because if I go back to my main timeline, I want to be able to update my text more often than I want to update my image. And so that is where, having it on the shape, the initial shape, might come in handy there. Let's go back into that, and I'm going to click on states here, go back into edit states, and then you can see right here, that is my shape. If I just really move this out, it is pretty much just a shape, and I'm going in and I'm aligning the text to the bottom. That's how I got it to push down to the bottom there. I'm going to hit Control Z just so it moves it back. Now I do have another shape, which is kind of this gray circle that is behind this icon because the icon is transparent. I don't want it transparent, and I kind of want it to look like it crops in. That's the way that I'm doing that. Now, with a new feature that's available in one of the most recent versions, I could actually come in here and I could actually crop this or merge this. But because I have that shape going up to the very top to be able to have the drop shadow, not sure if it'll allow me to then put it behind the image or something, or maybe I can cut out the image to have that. But this way works as well. And then on top of that, I'm using an icon. So I just have an arrow down icon, just significant to branching to go down a level as well. And then when you come back to it, I want to change it into a check mark. And that's exactly what I do is I add a visited state. And the only thing that really changes about the visited state is it now has a check mark. So when I come back to this, I want to show that visually you have completed this module. So I can do this based on a visited state, but like I mentioned, sometimes that's a little bit tricky because visited states, when you come back to it, the timeline may resume or it may automatically decide, okay, I'm just going to start over again or something like that. So to me, it's not as accurate as keeping track of it inside of a variable, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But there is one more visual thing that I'm just thinking of now. If I go under Format tab, I actually want to recolor this. And I want to recolor this to kind of a grayscale color. So when they come back to it as visited, it'll show grayscale and just indicate that they've already visited it, basically. So I'm going to do that with all three images. Let me go ahead and do that. But all of them are set up the same way. And when I copied and pasted it, I just swapped out the image and then I swapped out the text. So I'm going to click on Edit State. Let's click on that image. And then I'm going to go into Format. And then we're going to go ahead, not contrast, but under recolor, we're going to change that to grayscale. And then I'm going to go ahead and come into edit states here. go into visited, click on that, and then we're going to go ahead and go into format, go into recolor, and then grayscale right there. So we have all of this set up. And if I go back to my main timeline, I have just module 1, module 2, and module 3. Again, I am trying to keep it as simple as possible. Where I've seen people run into issues is where they're now trying to change the icon and then the image to a different state. And then they're trying to group it all and align it together. And sometimes, or adding a trigger to a group, you have to add it to the parent group instead of like something else. Just make it easier on yourself. And this will help you do that just by putting it into states. All right, so with that said, now let's go ahead and create the branching. Now, I did not actually stylize any of my other branching, my module 1, my module 2, module 3. I just have simple pages there. Now, what I want to do is on this page, when you click on the next button, I'm going to jump back to the main menu. So I'm going to go ahead and select this drop-down box and just go back to main slide here. And I'm going to do that at the end of every single section here. So let's go into this section, select this drop-down box, go into main slide there. Now what I need to do is come back into this main menu is I need to create a simple branching jump to slide. So let's go ahead and jump to slide, and we're going to do page 1 of module. Now I could jump to module and it would just go to the first page. Either way works in this case. So I'm going to jump to that slide. When we click on this, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the other slide. So we're going to jump to module 2, page 1. And then right here, we're going to go ahead and jump to module 3, page 1 as well. Now, one of the benefits of jumping to a scene, and instead of just jumping to a specific slide, is you may change. And so the first page now is no longer the first page. You may move it somewhere else. And that doesn't matter if you're jumping to a scene. It will just jump to the very first page in that scene. So that's one of the benefits of using jump to scene compared to jump to slide. I don't have a lot of slides right now in this example, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as is. All right, so this branching should be all in place. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this project, and let's make sure that this branching is in place. Now, the visited state may already be there, so when we come back to it, it may already have that check mark because visited just changes the state as soon as you click on it. Like I mentioned, this may not be as secure, and I'll show you why, but let's go ahead and click on module 1 here, and it will jump me to that page. Now, notice that it changed the state before it jumped me to that page. You may want to just prevent that from happening. You could change that state based on a variable. We can go back and talk about that. But if I click on next here, that second page doesn't have any text, but if I click on next again, it will take me back to that main menu and it will show a check mark. Now, this is where you may run into a problem. Let's say on your settings, when revisiting, this right here says automatically decide. Basically, what we're doing here is on this page, when we come back to it, we're letting Storyline decide to resume saved data or to start over again. Those are the two options. That is not very secure because what happens if Storyline decides that we're going to reset and we're going to start you from the timeline all over again from the very beginning? So I'm going to go ahead and select this drop-down box to reset to initial state. So if Storyline decides to reset to initial state and you're thinking, oh, it's visited, I'm going to come back to this page, this is the problem. So again, if it's automatically decide, if it's resume save data, you may be okay. But again, I feel a little iffy about that. Like it's not as secure. I'd rather make sure that it's secure. So let's go ahead and click on module 1. It'll jump me to that and it will jump me back to that main menu. So this is the problem. If it resets to the initial state, it's going to start the timeline all over again. And therefore it doesn't have any track of visited state. And there may be reasons why you need to reset the timeline, or there may be reasons why you don't. And if you don't, then what you could do is come into the page settings right here, and you could actually come in and resume save data. If you do that, then every time you come back to this page, it'll go back to the saved data. So now if I come back to that page, let me go ahead and preview this entire project again. But if I come back to this page, it's going to keep track of my visited state. So I'm going to click on that. Let's go back here, come back to that page, and there we go. Now, this is where it still could happen where it resets to the initial state. So if you're running into that issue, especially across browsers or something like that, then you may want to take this second approach if this approach isn't working out for you. And that is where you keep track of finished modules inside of the slide. To do that, you do a variable, and then you check to see if that variable has been visited or not. So that's where I would come in and set up, because we have 3 different modules, I would set up 3 different variables. Now, we want to keep track if that module has been visited or not. Has it been visited? Yes. Has it not been visited? No. If there's 2 different options, then most likely you'll use a variable, a true or false variable. So if it's been visited, true. If it hasn't been visited, false. So when I come in and I create this variable, I need to make sure that it's a true or false variable. So I'm going to go ahead and name it. Let me switch this over. And I'm going to name this to be module 1 visited. Now, you cannot have spaces in between the names, and so that's why I use something called camel case, which will have the first letter be lowercase, the second letters of all the additional words will be uppercase. And you want to make sure that you name it something that makes sense, so when you're actually linking things together and you come back to it, it makes sense here. So right now, the initial value is going to be false. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this, and I'm going to change the name of the second one to actually be 2 visited. Because it's going to be very similar, I can just go ahead and just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to go ahead and just rename this to the ones that I need. So revisited right there. You could just create new ones if you wanted to as well. So we have module 1, module 2, and module 3. Now what I'm going to do is at some point in module 1, I need to change that variable to true. And at some point in module 2, I need to change that variable to true. And some point in module 3, I need to change that variable to true. Just so I can check each of these, what I'm going to do, and this is often the case when you're troubleshooting or creating some type of logic like this, is I will display the variables here so I can actually see them as I start to develop. So I'm going to come in here and insert my text, and I'm going to delete this later. But for now, I'm just going to go into insert, and then I'm going to go into reference here, and I'm going to insert module 1. And then because it just gives me the true or false, I can just add some text before it, say module 1, colon, and there we go. So now I'm going to move this up a little bit because I'm going to bring that down a line here. So after that, we'll say module 2, and then colon, and then module 3, colon. So let's go bring in module 2 variables. So go into reference. We're going to just double click on module 2, and then go into reference. We're going to go ahead and double click on module 3. That way we can keep track if they've been changed to true or not. This again, I know that I'm going to need, when I come back to this page, I'm going to check to see if it's been changed to true. If it's been changed to true, then we're going to go ahead and change that to the visited state, or make sure that it stays at the visited state as well. All right, so now I'm going to go into module 1. So let's go back into our story view. And so right here is our module 1 here. So on the second page, I'm going to go ahead, and usually I do this at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and adjust the variable. So we're going to say adjust variable here. Let's scroll down right there. And then we're going to say module 1 to true. And we're going to do this when the timeline slide starts. So when the timeline starts, you can do this when the timeline ends, once they've completed everything, however you want. We just have to change it somewhere. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to copy that because it's very similar to what we need to do for module 2 and module 3. I'll go to the last page in module 2, and I'll hit paste up on the top, and then just select the drop-down box to be module 2. And then I'm going to come into module 3, hit paste. Oh, wrong one. We're on the wrong page. We want to do this on the second page. But I'm going to hit paste here, and then we're going to go ahead and change this to be module 3. Now, I'm not going to update the logic yet, but let's go ahead and just double check what this looks like. So let's go ahead and preview this entire course here. So you can see all of them are set to false to begin with, but if I click on module 1, and then I go ahead and come back to module 1, you can see that this is now true. Now, what happens if I go ahead and set that first page? Let me go into that very first page here. So let's say I set this first page to reset to initial state, or even automatically decide. But let's just do reset to initial state. What will happen with that variable if I come back to that variable and I check that variable? will it change? Will it be reset or anything like that? Let's check that. So if I click on module 1, it's going to jump me to there. And then if I come back to that, even though this did not pick up on the visited state, this is still true. So this is where I think it is more secure to go based off of the variables. So now every time I come back to this page, what I can do is I can check the variable and change the state of that variable if it's true. So let's go ahead and do that here. So I'm going to come back, and this is just, to me, it's more secure to do it this way than it is to do it based on states visited. But if I come back into here, I'm going to go ahead and adjust or change the state of, so that first one, we're going to change to visited. We already have that visited state when the timeline starts, and this is where we can use the condition. If module 1 visited is set to true. So I just select this drop-down box. If it's set to true, as soon as the timeline starts, it's going to go ahead and change that to visited. All right, so now we still have the setting here to reset to the initial state. So that one is still going to reset us, which doesn't keep track of the visited state. But now that I'm checking that visited state, the variable, it will still change it to visited. So initially it is not there because as soon as it, when I first preview the course, it is not set to true. But if I click on module 1 and then I go ahead and select that, come back, you can see that even though it's resetting to the initial value, we're no longer setting the visited based on the resume save data. We're doing this based on a variable. So this is where I think it is more secure to do it this way. Let's go ahead and make sure module 2 and module 3 are set up the same way. So once you set up one trigger, if it's very similar, you can just copy and paste. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this. And instead of set state of module 1, we're going to do module 2, but make sure you change the variable that you're checking to module 2 visited. And then I'm going to hit copy and paste. And then we're going to do the same thing for module 3 and make sure that we're doing this based on module 3 visited. So now I have a more secure way. So anytime I come back to this page, it is more secure on checking the state, the variable. I just have to do a couple of things. I have to set up the variable. I have to make sure that I trigger the variable to true at some point in that module. And when I come back to this, it is more secure and it's going to be more reliable. I guess that was the word I was looking for. Reliable. It is going to be more reliable when you come back to this page here. So let's just check this one more time. So let's click on module 1. We're going to go ahead and quickly just go through. And then we're going to click module 2, quickly go through. And then module 3, quickly go through that. And you can see all of them are set to true. Now I can get rid of the text on the bottom. But this is where you can then add a continue button to go conclude the course or something. So I could actually come in here and just for the sake of this, I'm going to go ahead and just insert some text. Not a button, but just say you are all done. Okay, and we're going to set that initial state to hidden. So it's not going to be there to begin with. But now I can check the variables on all of these and I can change that state if all those variables are true. So doing something similar to what we were doing here. We can go ahead and change the state of our text, which is down here. And I probably want to name that to conclusion text or something like that. Set it to normal, not when the timeline starts. Well, I guess when the timeline starts, but we could do it based off of state change, but I'm really trying to check for the variable. So when the variable changes, we're going to go ahead, and I guess let's do it when the timeline starts, because if I come back to this page, the timeline is going to restart anyways. So let's do timeline starts, and we're going to do if module is equal to true, and then if module 2 is equal to true, and then if module 3 is equal to true as well. If all of those are true, we're now going to show that continue or you're all done text. Or it could have like a continue button that basically takes you to the final page and kind of wraps up everything at that point. So let's go ahead and try this one more time. So I'm going to click on module 1. It's going to take me to module 1. I'm going to go ahead and come back to the main menu. We're going to click on module 2. We'll come back here. And then module 3. We'll come back to module 3. And then you can see right here, you're all done. So I think this is a more reliable way to be able to keep track of what pages or what sections have been visited And so when you're coming back to this main menu, it is more secure no matter if the page resets or if I go to another computer, because the LMS is going to save where you're at. It's going to save the variables. And so if I come back to it from another computer, even if I've cleared my cache or something like that, it's still going to keep track of what I've done and haven't done. Hopefully this is helpful for you. If you want to check out more, head on over to my website at learningdojo.ninja. Here you can check out all of my courses covering everything from A to Z in Articulate Storyline. You can check out my JavaScript for Storyline course, my XAPI Fundamentals course, my Articulate Rise course, as well as my custom course, my custom SCORM course, and then you can check out all my previous blog posts where I create a weekly video covering all different tips and tricks on Storyline and what you can do with Storyline and how to customize Storyline and things like that. And if you like this video, head on over to my YouTube channel, click the like button and subscribe to my channel, as well as hit the bell notification so you get notified of all future videos as they come out. That really helps my channel, allows my channel to continue to grow so I can really reach all learning developers to really help them extend and go beyond the basics inside of Storyline or whatever tool that they may be using. That's all I have for today, so thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time.